Welcome to the Anonymous Andrew podcast. Life and the choices we make. The choices other people make. Why we choose to ignore the red flags. Red flags like gaslighting, cheating, addiction, mental illness, and much more. What role do they play in relationships? Follow me each week as we discuss these topics with anonymous guests and experts to hopefully become better humans, resulting in better choices. Like I say, been there, still doing that. Now on to the show. Okay, welcome back to another episode of Anonymous Andrew, and I have a special guest with us today. I do have someone who wants to share his story. He was in a relationship for many years, and he experienced much of what I experienced. So I'm going to introduce you to Paul, and I'll let Paul take it over. Paul, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, about this relationship?
Okay, well, I was with a woman. We were married actually 25 years. And we were together for about 25 years. There's a story behind that, but it's really not important. But suffice it to say that I met this woman, and she was one of the best girlfriends I ever had. Great girlfriend, generous, very sexy, voluptuous, beautiful, all that stuff. And she was great. And at some point, I did want to get married, and she wanted to get married too. And that was, I guess, maybe part of our criteria when we were dating. And we wanted to have kids. So at some point, she said that she might have problems getting pregnant. So since that would have probably been a deal breaker for me, I was like, all right, well, let's try, you know? So we started, not using anything to see if she would get pregnant. And she did. So she got pregnant, I would say about 3 months after we started trying. And as soon as she told me she was pregnant, it was one of those moments where, the girl tells you she's pregnant and it's like, what are you going to do about it? And for me, it was an easy decision. I was like, oh, let's get married, you know? So we did. So we got married rather quickly. And we had to do it twice, but that's another story too. That's not really important. So my wife started, I guess, her her crap as soon as she got pregnant and moved in with me. So for the entire pregnancy, said she was pretty sick and stayed home and didn't really do very much. And then I had a really nice apartment, a one-bedroom, rent stabilized apartment, which if you live in New York City, those are like gold. And she didn't want to have the baby there. So we had to move to a two-bedroom, which was double the rent. And I was not very happy about it. But the guy at the rental place gave me some advice. He said, look, you're having a kid. He said, you're going to be going to work. So if she's happy, just go with it, make her happy, because you'll be at work trying to make money to support this kid. So I said, you know what? He's right. So we moved and we went to this nice two-bedroom apartment, double the rent. And fairly quickly, she decided to tell me that she wasn't going to go to work after this. And that's what I read after many years later in my relationship, was what they call the shit test. Because we had never discussed her not going to work. She had a job. It wasn't the greatest job, but she had a job. She had a career. And, I thought she would help me with, supporting the family, the baby, the future that we were going to have together. and she decided she was not going to do that anymore.
So are you
And I
wait,
guess
let me ask, is this after the baby's born and still a toddler, or after the baby has grown, is in like middle school? At what point in the child's
this was
life?
before she gave birth. This was towards the end of her pregnancy.
Okay.
I would say the second trimester, third trimester, maybe just before the third trimester, 6 months or so. And it's like, well, what am I going to do about it at this point? Am I going to get divorced?
Yeah.
It's like I'm going to have to pay for everything, pay for the baby, pay for her, and not get the benefit of being with my kid, of having a wife, of having sex with my wife, my beautiful wife. Um, and I was like, what am I going to do about it? So I was like, all right, whatever. Not much I could do about it. So that's what I learned was the shit test. It's like, how much shit will you put up with? And if you don't say no or cross the line, they'll continue. So, I went to work and tried to support the family as best I could. And she got pregnant again after about 2 more years. And, that was partially my fault. I didn't want to wait, I didn't want to have another kid in 2 years, but, you know, as things happen sometimes, we're not careful and, kid number two comes. And her argument that she wasn't going to go back to work because she wouldn't make that much money and she would just be giving it to the babysitter, um, was somewhat fishy with one kid because she would have made more than we would have paid the babysitter. But once she had two kids, it was like, all right, now you have more of a point. And anyway, you're not going to work anyway, so I'm just going to go to work. And then eventually we had three kids. We moved to a house just before the third child. And then it's like, forget it. Well, you might as well stay home because, the amount we're going to pay for three kids, it's not worth it. So my wife, she was a fairly good mother, I would say. I wouldn't say she was a great housekeeper. She was a great cook, um, great in bed. I was very happy in that department and very happy with her cooking. Mom, she was a good mom, but I think she was a little overprotective. And she never really let me put my 2 cents in, really, where it came to the kids. Um, she was a teacher. So she had studied early education and all this stuff. And I always kind of gave in to her when it came to the kids because I thought maybe she knows better about this stuff. But she never really was too interested in my opinion when it came to the kids. It was like, she'd listen to it, but if she didn't agree with it, she went ahead with what she wanted. So for many years, well, we kind of went along like this. The kids grew up. I went to work. I had a job where I didn't always like, but I put up with it because I kind of had no choice. I had an entire family to support. I had to have health benefits and all this nonsense. A couple of my kids had, medical issues. So there was like no choice. This was before Obamacare. And, if you had a pre-existing condition, well, too bad, the insurance company wouldn't cover you if you had a pre-existing condition. So I had to stay in this job, in this career, which I grew at times to hate because I had to take care of my kids. So anyway, it was never, I was never going to be a rich man at this job, but it was a good job with good benefits. And at some point, I lost this job. I worked there for a long time, 28 years. And well, that's when the problems start. Because if I had made enough money for my wife to spend it recklessly, we wouldn't have had a problem. I should also say that my wife was horrible with money. She was great at spending it, not great at making it, and not great at managing it. I mean, I would tell her, look, if you're not going to go to work, and I tell you this is all we can make, all we can spend, at least listen to me. And she never would. One time she came home. This is before I lost my job. One time I came home and she would always buy stuff from QVC, those shopping networks.
Right.
And I would always find boxes in the garbage, because she would buy it and like try to throw away the boxes, and so I wouldn't see what she bought. One time I came home and she bought about $200 worth of absolute junk, which we did not need. She went to Target. I think it was Target, and she just bought. It was just stuff that we didn't need, and we certainly couldn't afford. And I started yelling at her and screaming at her about this. And she ended up actually picking up a knife and threatening me with it, like not to come near her. Now, I was never going to come near her. I would never hit a woman. That's not my thing. I can't. I mean, even though she might have deserved it many a time, I just couldn't do it. And she started threatening me because she said, well, after she called the cops, she said that she felt threatened. So anyway, I did kind of give it away there. She called the cops. Now, all I did was scream at her and yell at her about the money, which I felt like I had a right to. She was the one that pulled out. I mean, it was like a kitchen knife, one of those, chef's knives, a big goddamn 8-inch knife or something. And she was holding it, like to keep me away. I wasn't even near her, And the cops came and, she told them that I had threatened her and blah, blah, blah. And, yada, yada, yada. So, well, anyway, I asked the cops, well, did she tell you she pulled a knife on me? And she said, no. They said, no, she didn't say that. And I said, well, she did. And, because they didn't see anything, they didn't talk. Well, I did say that I lost my job, and that was before I lost my job. But after I lost my job, we started having more and more problems. And the cops were at my house, I would say, 10 times. At some point after I lost my job, she decided I was no longer good enough to sleep in the bed, which I was paying for in the house that I was paying for, the bedroom that I was paying for. She didn't want me in there. So she decided to lock me out. We had one of those thumb locks on the bedroom door that you could lock from the inside.
Right.
She decided to lock me out. And I remember one time, I really needed to sleep. I was going to work. I had another job at this point, making less money, but it was still a job. And it wasn't good enough for her. So she decided, oh, that's not good enough. You have to sleep in the basement. So I would go to sleep in the basement. I did not get good sleep there. I eventually bought like one of those futon sofas so I could, get a better night's sleep. Just wasn't good. And sometimes I really just wanted to go back in my bed. And she locked me out. And one night I took tools and I took the lock off the door. And she's like, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, she called the cops. And the cops said that I can't do that. And I'm like, what do you mean I can't do that? It's my bed. I need to go to sleep. I got to go to work in the morning. She doesn't have to go to work. She's just sitting there lazy as shit. And, well, anyway.
The cops told you that you couldn't remove the latch on the inside of your bedroom door.
I couldn't remove the lock. Because I took the screws out of the lock. The lock was, I guess, from the outside, the screws. So I couldn't take off the lock. And, well, anyway, the cops left that time. And another time that she locked me out, I asked the cops if she could lock me out. And they said, no, she can't do that. So I called the cops and they said that they told her you can't lock him out. I don't know. This went on, I don't know how many times. It was ridiculous. And we started having problems. And, I worked at this company, which I won't name, for 28 years. So after I lost this job, I really didn't know what to do with myself. I mean, I had been with this place for 28 years. I really didn't know any place else. She said, can you get a job at another company like this? And I was like, no, they're all laying off. And and she was always comparing me to some of her girlfriends who had husbands who would get laid off and found jobs in other fields rather quickly. And I said, well, it doesn't, my field is not growing, it's shrinking. So I couldn't find another job. And she had absolutely no sympathy for me. I've been there 28 years. And I could have used a little sympathy back then, a little understanding. She gave me about 6 months of that. And I
So
couldn't
it's
find a job in 6 months.
so it's fair to say she wasn't empathetic towards
Not at all.
supportive of the fact that you're the breadwinner in the home. You're doing your best to keep a roof over her and three kids, and she's making it difficult. And then you lose the job, and she gives you, I guess, crap about it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's about right. So I started talking, and I was not getting sex anymore. She cut off the sex supply. I guess at some point, maybe that 6 month point, and we're not having, sex, and we're not even sleeping together. We're not even sleeping in the same bed. So I started to look for kind of like a friend, you know, more than a lover, just like somebody to listen to me, and and be a little supportive. So I ended up going online and talking to this woman online, and I had no interest in her really sexually attracted to her or anything like that, but she was a great listener, and she was a good friend, and she was supportive. She said the things that I needed to hear, that basically that sucks that they did that to you, and how are you doing with that? She was very supportive.
She validated your feelings and
Yes,
supported you.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
She validated my feelings, and we even met 3 times. I wouldn't call them dates. They were just kind of like meetings with friends. But she was strictly a friend. To me, she was a friend. And anyway, my ex found out about this. And oh boy, the floodgates were open after that. Because even though nothing happened between me and this woman, it didn't matter. She found out about it and she was livid, beyond livid. I think if she could have killed me and gotten away with it, she would have. And well, what can I say? I found out she started. I found out that she had sex with her cousin's wife's brother. Now I didn't know this at the time, but I did know that she was getting together with him. Without me, like family gatherings were no longer okay for me to go to. You know, um, she would go with the kids and would visit her family. And I guess that's where this kind of struck up because he was having some problems with his wife. And I didn't know they had sex at the time, but I had a suspicion because I found a birthday card to her. And the things he wrote in that birthday card, not that he was very explicit or anything, but were the kind of things that a lover writes to another lover, like I can't live without you and blah, blah, blah. You're my everything. I'm paraphrasing, but this kind
Right.
of thing. And I was like, these people are fucking. That's what I thought. But I couldn't prove it. She did admit it to me many years later. And I was like, well, I never had sex with that woman, but whatever. I don't know how many times my wife cheated on me. We were still married, we were not divorced. It was not okay to have sex with somebody else. And I don't know how many times she may have cheated on me. It's possible she may have cheated on me other times. There were other times that I was suspicious, because she was the kind of woman that I think was always trying to get a leg up, you know, always trying to like, I don't know, get
So,
something from people.
you're when you said you had a feeling she was sleeping with somebody else, what was this, like a gut feeling, an intuition?
A gut feeling, a suspicion. Yeah, yeah. I could never prove it, but I think some of my neighbors, one of my neighbors, offered to drive her sometimes to go visit her mother. Um, and I'm like, I didn't like that idea because he was married, she was married, and this guy was always making comments about my wife. You know, he liked her. She had, she was voluptuous. She had a um, large breasts, which, and he was always making comments about it. And I was like, he was my neighbor. Otherwise, I think I would have punched him out. you know. But I was like, shut the fuck up. This is my wife you're talking about. And I was like, where did he come off, talking like that? And I don't know. He offered to drive her, several times to visit her mother, and I thought something might have happened there. There was also another neighbor that he was smart enough not to say anything, but I got that feeling like, you ever have a guy that like winks at you, like something's going on, I don't know, just like I got that feeling, and I don't know, I just got that feeling. I could never prove it though.
Well, and this is too similar to my story. There were so many times that there wasn't so much the red flags, like in my story. If the audience listens to episode 2, some of the red flags, it was just gut feelings or gut intuition telling me odd behaviors, and then I started picking up signs,
Mm-hmm.
like you did. You like the neighbor were winking or whatever. So
Yeah,
you know, but you can't at the time prove it.
you can't
And
prove it.
right.
And I've been in relationships before, some of them, kind of long. And when a woman did cheat on me, I would get that feeling, or suspicion. And every time I got that, I always was right. So it's like, you know, if you get that feeling, I just say, trust your gut,
Trust your
because
gut.
yeah,
Absolutely. That's what I
because it,
tell everybody.
yeah,
Trust it.
something is telling you this and it's not coming from nowhere.
Right.
But, my wife would actually, poo-poo all this stuff. Like, I told her about the neighbor, the one, that, liked her breasts and stuff. And, she was like, oh, it's nothing, he's not, he would never do anything. Meanwhile, I found out he was having problems with his wife, and eventually he did cheat on his wife, and he left his house for like 9 months. And oddly enough, he ended up being with a woman who looked a hell of a lot like my wife, you know.
Wow.
And he also made some comments to me sometimes like that, that she was too good for me, that I was out of my league. Now, my wife was attractive, I'll give her that. She was, a very attractive woman. Um, but she also, didn't work, didn't really have a career, she didn't have a lot to offer in some of the other areas. And, she wasn't the most attractive woman in the world. She wasn't like Heidi Klum or something, but she was attractive. But I certainly don't think, she was out of my league. As a matter of fact, I think, she was kind of maybe lucky to be with me.
Good.
Lucky to be with a guy who was, willing to put up with her shit and support her and give her the lifestyle that she felt that she was entitled to.
Any
You know?
other type of so if you would confront her on your suspicions, you would get what type of answer? Like
Um, gaslit.
get yeah,
Exactly.
you're paranoid,
It's
you're
all in your
crazy.
mind. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you talking about? She wouldn't actually say that I'm crazy, but she would say, she would poo-poo it, um, make it seem like what I was talking about wasn't really true, didn't exist, wasn't really there. You know, she would laugh about the neighbor across the street because he wasn't the most attractive guy, and she'd be like, ew, how could you think that, And I don't know, just and it wasn't the only time. I can't remember some other time. Oh, now another thing that came up was eventually she discovered Facebook, and that was maybe one of the worst things because she started contacting old friends, and one of the old friends that she contacted was her ex-boyfriend.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And this was always the one that she would say to her girlfriends that he was the love of my life and blah, blah, blah. And I don't want to say too much about him, but well, let's just leave it at that. And I actually, I ended up installing maybe I shouldn't have done this, but my suspicions were really strong at this point. So I ended up installing one of these like spyware things on I guess it was the computer or something, you know? And I got some screenshots of him and her talking. And they were pretty horrible. I mean, they weren't anything like they had had sex, but they were talking about it. Certainly he was. And they were even talking about getting together, you know? So, I mean, at this point, things were going bad. She was contacting old boyfriends. I was talking to this girl. She had been, it got worse from there. We slept in separate beds. The cops were at our house. It was horrible. I started talking to divorce attorneys, and so did she. And the thing is, I'm not a rich man. I'm not even that well off. And to go through a divorce, it's expensive.
A lot of money. Yep.
It's a lot of money, and then it's like, well, even if you got through it cleanly without spending a lot of money, well, how do you have two separate lifestyles now? You have to afford that, especially if she doesn't have any money, or I guess in the reverse case, he doesn't have any money. If one is a lot worse off financially than the other one has to pay for that person.
Sure.
So I was like, great, I would have to pay for her. I would have to pay for the kids. I'd have to pay for the house. I was like, this is just disaster. So I did the math at some point and I said, I don't think we can afford to get divorced. Let's just try to make the best of things, at least until maybe the kids are in college, which at that point was maybe another 6 years. Wasn't a great option, but I was like, look, let's try to make the best of things. We have to live together. We can't afford two separate places. She didn't want to hear that. She just wanted me out at that point. And that's when she would call the cops, regularly. Um,
Now
I remember.
this was in New York City. Still.
No, this was in Long Island. We were
Okay.
living in Long Island. Yeah,
Okay.
we when we had our third kid, we moved to Long Island, and we lived there for a long time. I would say 20, 25 years, certainly more, 22 years, let's say. And well, what can I say?
So the first discussion about divorce while you suggested that you stay together for financial reasons, she didn't want that.
She didn't want that. No, she wanted
And
me out.
so what happened? Did you
Well,
file?
I refused to leave. I was like, I'm not going to leave. So that's when she started torturing me and calling the cops for every little thing. That's when, the bedroom door incidents came up. Um, and oh my God, it was so bad. I mean, the cops were at my house 10 times. I counted them over the years.
So
Uh,
because you wouldn't give her the divorce or
right,
pay for it, or she made your life miserable.
right. She tortured me. Yeah, she tortured. One time, I contacted a woman. I won't get into the details, but I contacted a woman, and she found out about it. Um, and she poured an entire cup of water in my laptop computer.
Hmm.
Now I had an Apple MacBook at the time. I think it cost about $900. She got mad at me, poured the whole thing into the computer, completely ruined it. I mean, I ran to the Apple store with it. I tried to, and they were like, "You have to make an appointment." I have to.
Yeah,
I came back a week later. They said, there's nothing they could do. It's ruined.
yeah, no. Water and laptops are like oil and vinegar.
Yeah. So another time, I got another computer, same model, and I couldn't prove it, but I swear she stole it because I left the house. I was not even 5 minutes away from the house, and I realized that I had left it in the house, or forgotten it, or didn't have it, and I had brought it at the time. We were separated at this point, and
Separated as in living in separate.
living separately, living separately.
Okay, okay.
Um, I didn't get to that part yet, but she swears that she didn't have it, that it wasn't there. But I was like, where could it be? You know. So they want another $900. Um, it was just horrible. So eventually, that the 10th time that the cops came to my house, it was a frigging disaster. There were no less than one, two, three, four Nassau County police vehicles at my house. She had told them that I was crazy, um, that I was taking psychiatric meds, and that I was, I think she said, bipolar, and that I was acting crazy. Now I wasn't bipolar. I was taking some meds for being depressed, probably because of her, but that was it. And I didn't think I was acting crazy, but she had managed to convince the police. So the police came with the police ambulance, because in
Yep.
Nassau County, the police do the ambulance, in case I was crazy, I guess.
Yeah.
the um, the two police cars, I think it was two police squad cars, didn't really understand what to do with the situation. So they called I guess their captain or their supervisor, maybe it was the sergeant, because they didn't know what to do. I was talking to one of the cops. He was sympathetic to me. The other, they say they separate you in any of these domestic disputes. They separate you right away. So one talks to one person, the other talks to the other person. They talked to my daughter. Now, my daughter, they showed, my wife showed my daughter. I mean, my daughter's bedroom. My daughter liked to dress. I don't know. Maybe some girls do this. She would take all her clothes out and throw them on the ones that she didn't want to wear. She would throw on the floor. So her room was a friggin' disaster. We just closed the door. So she told the cops that I did that.
Wow.
She lied. And she also said some other things about, what I was doing that day. And she lied. And so one cop believed me. The other cop, I guess, believed her. I don't know. So they didn't know what to do. The supervisor said, you can't stay here. Do you have a place to go? I said, yeah, I can go to my mom's. This is what I usually do in this situation. I had a fight with my wife, couldn't take it, and go to my mom's. So I said, yeah, I'll go to my mom's. She said, why don't you go there, and you'll sort this out in the morning. So that's what we did. But I said, this is the last time, because I couldn't believe there were 4 of them at my house at the time, that she calls the cops on me. And that's when I made my decision that I wasn't coming back. So that's when, I guess, the straw that broke the camel's back. But she continued to torture me. She didn't like that I left her. That was a sore spot for her. It was always like, how dare you leave me? I leave you, you don't leave me. And it's like, no, I couldn't take it anymore, so I'm leaving you. Now, we didn't get divorced for another 3 years because of the finances. I couldn't figure it out, and I had enough to deal with, just finding a place to stay and getting my life together a little bit. So for another 3 years, we didn't get divorced. But finally we did.
I hear a lot of what the gaslighting, the deception, the reverse blaming, especially calling that's a new one on me, is having, I mean, I'm sure it happens all the time. Domestic, I think the police get more domestic calls these days than ever before, but and they have to take them more seriously these days, because back in the day it wasn't as, I remember that I had that in my first marriage. There was a couple times the cops were called, and they don't want to have to go back to the precinct and write up the paperwork, or I have a story from my a relationship where it was Thanksgiving, and the woman I was living with, her sister was over, and she didn't like me, and I don't remember what the whole thing was over, but it was something about the sister of this woman I was with. She called the cops, and now I legally own some firearms for hunting, although I do not kill animals. But anyway, she told them that I had firearms in the house, and they were legal, but there was a restraining order the next morning, and they once there's a restraining order in place, they have to confiscate the weapons. And sure enough, the sheriff showed up the next morning and took all of my my legal firearms, and to this day I've never gotten them back.
Yeah, she did that too. She got a restraining order against me.
For what? Because a restraining order. Yeah, you never laid a hand on her.
I know, but the fact, all they have to say is they feel threatened.
Yeah,
that's it. I think what happened is, when she started having problems with me and she started contacting old friends and stuff, she started, dealing with women who were in a similar situation, or who had gone through divorcees, or going through divorce. And she started listening to these people. And I think some of them told them that, they call the cops to use it as and get restraining orders to use it as leverage in the divorce.
Yeah, because they'll see it on record how many times the cops came to the house, and you're always the bad guy. Did you ever call the police, or it was always her?
I called the police at least once or twice on her. One time when she locked me out, when I found out that she can't lock me out, I called the cops on her, and they explained to her that she can't lock me out. So after that, I think she had to leave the door unlocked. That was maybe the third or fourth time that the police were called.
When you say she locked you out, out of the house or out of the bedroom?
Out of the bedroom. Out of the bedroom.
Yeah. Okay, so it sounds so. to my theme of my podcast is, why do we put up with this?
Uh-huh.
Now, you know, the last relationship I was in, there was no children involved. Obviously, I'm much older. If anything, I have grandchildren now. But in your situation, I can see, and there's two sides to the theory of to stay with the kids, stay together for the kids' sake, and then there's the flip side of that where they say it does more damage to the kids to see this unstable household. So there's two theories.
Right.
Depending on who you talk to. I've listening to podcasts. I've heard both arguments, and they both have valid points.
Absolutely.
In your case, staying there financially made sense, but in the long run, it can hurt the kids, especially if they keep seeing police show up.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
but to the theme is at the first sign of cheating, or the first sign of deception, or the first sign of gaslighting, or however you want to describe your experience, why do we stay? Why didn't we at some point say, I can't take this? I mean, ultimately you left, but that took 25 years.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
I mean, we're married for 23 or 22 at that point, but yeah. Eventually I couldn't take it no more.
Yeah. No, I don't blame you. I mean, your sanity begins to crumble. I
mean, for a long time, we just kind of went along, I mean, when things were like, I mean, I would say there were years where we were happy, I mean, when we were raising the kids and everything was going well. And then there were years where they were just okay, like, all right, we're raising the kids. Things aren't going great, but they're not going bad either, so it's just kind of like I don't know, flowing down the river, it's just like I didn't really have a reason to leave. Was I super happy? No, but a lot of marriages aren't super happy. But we're raising the kids. I'm having a good sexual relationship with her. Emotionally, it was pretty good.
But when all that stopped, when the locking you out of the bedroom and the denial of sex and the calling of the police, it was that moment forward is where listen.
Why did I stay then? Right.
I'm trying to be objective here. I'm listening to your story, and we're both men talking about a relationship with a woman, but I want to be objective here, and because from what I'm hearing from you, you were the breadwinner. You had a woman who told you in her trimester that she was not going to work, and you produced 3 children, and somebody had to pay the bills, and that was you.
Right.
So it sounds to me, it sounds that she didn't respect or support especially when you got let go and you had to find another job. I would like to think that a partner would step up and say, hey, I'll go get a part-time job. And help out and help pay some of the bills. So
right. Yep. That's exactly what happened. Yeah, I didn't get a good job. If we had at the time 3 jobs, we had 3 people capable of working, one of them which would have been my son. I said, if all 3 of us can get jobs, we could keep the house. We could pay the bills.
Especially when the kids are 16, 17, and 18, they can absolutely be working as a cashier someplace. When I grew up, and I even had, I've told this story. I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I had all the good things. but my father didn't hand me money. You know, I mean, he paid for my education, and I had a nice roof of my house and good community, good schooling. But I was told that I had to get a job, and I did. I did. One of my very first jobs was, I think 14 or 15, putting Christmas trees on people's cars during the holidays. You know, you tie them up and um,
Oh yeah,
so,
yeah, sure.
so on and
Yeah.
so forth. Paul, I want to thank you for coming on. Folks, I know Paul. We have a common theme in our lives, that so I know him. Paul, maybe I'll have you back in I don't know, a couple of weeks, a month. There is another part of your life, if you would like to share that I know about. I'm not going to disclose it, but it is what your current situation is,
Mhm.
and I would like to talk about that, if you are willing to. I know it's caused you a lot of angst in the past couple of years. So Paul has moved on, obviously, from the marriage, and he now has a new woman in his life. How long have you been with the current one?
Oh, about 6 years, I would
Yeah.
say.
So there's another whole story, but with a different twist to Paul's second story. So I would like, you and I will talk off camera, off
Okay.
mic, and if it's something you're comfortable talking about,
Mhm.
some of the things that you and I have talked about, because that's another whole topic,
Yeah, it's a different theme
different altogether.
entirely. Yeah,
Nothing to
yeah.
do with gaslighting, nothing to do with red flags. But it is something that I would like my audience to hear, and because
Okay.
again, when I started this podcast and told my story, I said I can't be the only one out there experiencing this, and I got, oh my God, within the first couple of weeks, I got floods of people on Facebook, Instagram, emails, all over the place saying, no, no, you're not alone. I went through this, and so, and you were one of them. So, I really appreciate you coming on and telling your side. And, in fairness, but if this was Dr. Phil, Dr. Phil would have your wife on, and he would have her give her side of the story. But I don't think we need that, and I think it is. I believe your version. I know you, and I know that you're a hard worker. As a matter of fact, folks, Paul is working right now, and he has odd hours, and he works extremely hard. We're not going to talk about what you do, but he's literally at his job right now, and he's got like an hour in between his next gig. I guess we'll just leave it at that.
Mhm.
So I know Paul is a hard worker, and is not a slouch. So I can vouch for you on that. So I know that when you were building a family, um, I know that you went out and you worked, and just to have somebody who's to say, no, I'm not gonna, at least when the kids got old enough to go to school, she could have gone out and got a part-time, especially if she had a teaching degree. She could have
Mhm.
done substitute teaching somewhere at a school, and
Oh,
got
so
there
many
by,
things.
yeah, and then got home before the kids got home from school, and there would have been that second income. It would have made your life so much easier.
Yeah. I even
So
offered to put her through. She had a 2-year degree, and I even offered to put her through for the next 2 years so she could get a full license and maybe get into a system and get a good job. I mean, teaching is a good job, has good benefits. Maybe it doesn't pay the most, but it's very secure, and it's stable, and it would have been great. But she didn't want to do it. She would rather
yeah.
sit on her butt.
Yeah, I think she picked you to be the father of her children. Clearly,
Mhm.
she wanted children, but she didn't want to work. And listen, again, there's two theories to that. There's the
Mhm.
whole world of stay-at-home moms,
Mhm.
which there's a concept where the stay-at-home moms are better off for the kids because the kids get better educations and the
Right.
parents. And then
Right.
there's
Right.
the flip side is where both parents need to work. It
Mhm.
depends. It depends on the socioeconomic status of
And and also where you live. I mean, we live,
exactly.
in Long Island. That most people require
Have
two
two
jobs.
jobs. Yeah, Long
Yeah.
Island is. I don't know the stats, but it's probably one of the most expensive places to live in the United States.
Right.
So Nassau
And I
County
guess
has.
I guess the main thing also was this is not what we agreed to the entire time we were dating. You know, this is
Well,
like something she sprung on me after she was already, with
pregnant.
child.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well,
And it
that's
was too late to get an abortion or anything like that. It was way too far.
yeah, and that's a form of gaslighting there. That's
Yeah.
let's have children and but then after the fact, I'm not going to work. So, all right, Paul, you got work to do, and I got
Okay.
let me go edit this. But listen, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing the story. We'll talk
Okay.
again about your second story if you want to share that, and we'll have you back if that's okay with you.
Okay.
And again, thank you, and all the best to you. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Good.
All
I
right.
was appreciated that letting me tell my story.
It feels good, doesn't it? Sometimes just to get it out, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, it does. It does.
Okay. All right, Paul. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.